Straight through. Conn. Goal.
They didn't misunderstand him. They understood him perfectly and still chose to turn away. Alfie Conn, a name that still carries tension when it's spoken out loud. A player who learned how quickly love turns conditional. He gave them moments they still remember, then watched those moments get used against him. And when the noise turned cold, he didn't chase it back. He challenged authority when silence was safer. He crossed lines knowing the cost, and when doors closed, he never knocked twice. Friends drifted away without goodbyes. Managers moved on without explanations. Crowds that once sang his name learned to say it with bitterness. They called him difficult, called him arrogant, called him disloyal when he stopped belonging to anyone. But beneath the defiance was something quieter. A man who remembered every slight, every look, every word that couldn't be taken back. He didn't forgive them, because some things don't deserve forgiveness. And some scars are meant to stay visible. Football moved on, he didn't need to. Subscribe to remember the ones who refused to bow. Alfred James Conn, born 5th April 1952. Kirkcaldy, Fife. He didn't just grow up near football, he was born inside its shadow. His father, Alfie Conn Jr, was already a name written in ink. The heartbeat of hearts, a legend of the terrible trio. They called him a magician, a man who made defenders disappear. But that kind of legacy doesn't lift you, it traps you. Alfie Jr wasn't the prodigy they smiled at. He was the inheritance they expected. They gave him a tennis ball before he could read, drilled balance, punished errors, demanded silence. There were no questions in that house, only standards, only reminders. Your father was Alfie Conn. Don't forget what name you carry. He didn't forget, but he also didn't bow. Even as a boy, something in him refused to kneel, refused to be moulded. And when Rangers knocked, they weren't getting a boy with dreams. They were getting a teenager with pressure in his veins, anger in his spine, and a name the world already thought they owned. They thought he'd obey. But Alfie Conn never obeyed anyone. He was barely 20, but already too wild for their leash, too proud for small money, too loud for silence. Alfie Conn wasn't made for rules. And Rangers, they were built on them. The club that had dominated Scottish football, from Ibrox to Barcelona 72, demanded loyalty without question. But Conn didn't blink. He got up, walked out, and never begged. It wasn't about the money, it was the insult, he later said. They thought he'd crawl back. Instead, he drew a line. Respect or nothing. Behind the scenes, manager Willie Waddell, the man who once rebuilt Rangers after the Ibrox disaster, tried to contain him, but Alfie wasn't theirs to contain. Then came Jock Wallace, ex-goalkeeper, fitness tyrant, a man who worshipped grit and detested flash. From day one, Conn and Wallace were oil and fire. We were on different planets, Conn admitted. Wallace didn't just drop him, he disarmed him, one lineup at a time. But Conn never cracked. No tabloid tantrums, no staged apologies, just that same smile. That said, he'd rather vanish than conform. Then came the twist. Spurs wanted him, and Alfie was ready. He thought he was flying to sign for Manchester United. He'd even spoken to Tommy Docherty. But when he landed, a Cockney voice said, "Welcome to Tottenham." Spurs had jumped the queue, and Conn didn't flinch. In his debut, a hat-trick. White Hart Lane sang his name before Scotland could whisper it again. But under the surface, he knew what this meant. If Rangers had frozen him out, now they'd hate him for shining. If Wallace had sidelined him once, now he'd blacklist him forever. Alfie didn't care. This wasn't about revenge. This was about survival. On his own terms. He didn't just leave Glasgow, he escaped it. Alfie Conn wore blue with swagger. He played like the wind. He mocked defenders with dragbacks, chipped penalties, and a grin that made half of Scotland furious. But when he walked out of Rangers, the bridge burned behind him. And in 1977, he did the unthinkable. He signed for Celtic. Not just crossed the divide, he lit it on fire. This wasn't just a transfer, it was a declaration. A one-finger salute to the Ibrox silence that tried to erase him. He put on the green and white with no apology. And when they asked if he regretted it, "I don't care what colour the shirt is, as long as I'm playing." But the truth ran deeper. At Ibrox, the silence had cut him.
At Celtic Park,
The cheers felt like revenge. And yet, the move came with a price. Rangers fans didn't just boo him, they spat on his name. Old friends stopped calling. Some teammates wouldn't even speak. Even Jock Wallace, the man who once froze him out, refused to acknowledge his name in public again. He'd become a ghost to half of Glasgow. A traitor, they said. A mercenary, others muttered. But Alfie knew what they missed. He wasn't running to Celtic. He was running from everything Rangers had denied him. The love, the respect, the freedom. He played 2 seasons at Parkhead, 1977 to 1979. Short, chaotic, unforgettable. One moment, weaving past defenders with brilliance. The next, at war with injuries and whispers from the terraces. He was too Rangers to ever be Celtic, one fan said, but too wild to belong to anyone. Even Celtic legends didn't quite trust him. He was the joker in the pack. Electric, unpredictable, untamed. And when he left, there was no farewell, no tribute, no goodbye. Just another door slammed shut, and a fire still smouldering behind it. They didn't just call him wild, they called him ridiculous. The Scottish press had a name for Alfie Conn, the Clown Prince. It started as a joke, a nod to his flair, his tricks, the way he sat on the ball or flicked it with his studs. But jokes turned cruel when repeated long enough. When he dyed his hair, when he showboated, when he played with joy that didn't ask permission. They didn't celebrate it. They targeted it. Back pages painted him as unserious. Columnists mocked his loyalty. One paper said, Alfie Conn plays for himself, for the mirror, not the badge. Even as he scored, assisted, and danced through defenders, the narrative stuck. Worse, and it spread to the terraces. You could hear it in the chants. He's a circus act. He's a joke in boots. He'd rather sit on the ball than score. But what they missed, what they refused to understand, was that Alfie wasn't putting on a show. He was surviving. Each drag back, each chipped pass, each audacious run wasn't for applause. It was a protest against systems that crushed freedom, against managers who benched creativity, against a media that only knew how to praise grit, not grace. He never answered the papers, never clapped back in interviews. He let his boots do the talking, but behind the grin, his silence grew heavy. The headlines chipped away at something deeper. He once said in a rare moment, when they stop laughing at you, they forget you. I'd rather be hated than forgotten. And that was the tragedy, because as Alfie aged, they did forget. Clown, genius, traitor. The labels faded. And the man who once lit up stadiums was left out of the stories he helped write. Alfie Conn disappeared, not in the way footballers retire and take pundit seats. He vanished, from headlines, from interviews, from memory. In 1979, he crossed the Atlantic, not for glory, not for gold, but for quiet. Pittsburgh Spirit, indoor. Then San Jose earthquakes. Then Hartford bicentennials, indoor. NASL lights were bright but not blinding. It was a strange final act. Crowds didn't know his history. No Rangers chants. No Celtic venom. Just American fans who saw flicks and flair and smiled. But Alfie wasn't smiling. Not really. Back home, his name had become folklore without reverence. A trivia answer. A punchline from the terraces. He played 20 times in California. Scored a few. Assisted more. But he wasn't chasing records. He was outrunning memory. No major farewell. No club dinner. Not even a final quote. Just silence. And that's the part history forgets. He didn't just fall out of form, he fell out of favour. Out of stories. Out of the mythos he helped create. The boy who once dribbled past legends in Glasgow. Ended in front of half-full bleachers in the sun. And when he came back to Scotland, no club called. No newspaper followed up. No redemption arc arrived. He was 31. And finished. A player with magic in his boots. Banished by labels no boot could shake. Alfie Conn's exile didn't end in America. It started there because when the lights dimmed, he realised he wasn't just forgotten. He had been erased. Alfie Conn Jr, son of a Rangers legend, breaker of sectarian codes, scorer of cup final goals, left the game without a send-off. Was it because of his choices? Because he laughed while crossing Glasgow's red lines? Because he didn't care who clutched pearls in the press box? Whatever the reason, the silence was deliberate, calculated, punishment disguised as forgetfulness. He once asked for a return to Rangers, quietly, was told it wouldn't be right. They didn't say he wasn't good enough. They said it wouldn't look right. That was the scar. Not rejection, but rejection without words. As if he'd broken something sacred. Something that couldn't be named. Only erased. No club ever made amends. No fan started a campaign. No banner in the stands. Even in interviews decades later, when asked about the missing goodbyes, he didn't complain. He just smiled, that same crooked smile from Ibrox and Hampton Parks, and said, "That's how it goes." But behind that grin was a wound still bleeding. No manager said, "Thank you." No teammates rallied. No director offered a final curtain. And perhaps the worst part, he never expected one, because somewhere along the line, Alfie Conn had learned the cruel truth about loyalty in football. It's a myth you're punished for not believing, and a prison when you do. They cheered him when it suited them. But when it came time to honour him, really honour him, they looked away. Inducted into Rangers Hall of Fame in 2007, Alfie Conn played 233 Senior League games, scored 57 goals, and left behind a career that was as electric as it was misunderstood. At Rangers, he became the youngest ever to lift the Scottish Cup, and scored in that 1973 final. At Celtic, he stunned the terraces with brilliance they never saw coming. At Spurs, he danced through defenders in a survival fight, keeping them in the First Division with one of the club's most iconic individual performances. He didn't rack up hundreds of caps, only 2 for Scotland. No goals, no follow-up, because Alfie Conn didn't play by the rules, and Scotland punished players who didn't ask permission. In the NASL, he wore the shirt of Pittsburgh Spirit and San Jose Earthquakes, a brief American chapter where even across the ocean, he still confused the system. He broke through eras, broke with tradition, and broke the silence of Glasgow's divide, and for that the silence came back around. No page in the official tributes, no calls from the suits, just memories kept alive by those who remember what he really was. They say legends leave trails. Alfie Conn left smoke. Few wore Rangers blue, then Celtic green, and still walked with swagger. Few defied club orders, public image, and still danced through defences like theatre on grass. But Alfie Conn Jr., now aged 73, never wanted permission, never waited for applause. He played for fire, and every moment was lit. He made headlines for tricks, not trophies. Made enemies because he wouldn't bow. And while the game moved on, the fans who felt him never did. Ask Spurs fans what saved them in 75. One man, one match, one maverick. For one unforgettable night, White Hart Lane had a king, and his name was Alfie Conn, wearing white like it was war paint. Alfie Conn, survival delivered, no fear. Ask Glasgow what it meant to cross the divide and silence both ends. Only Alfie did it. Only Alfie could. When football ended, no coaching, no TV gigs. He worked in haulage, ran pubs, did night shifts at DX in Livingston, then drove back to Coatbridge to watch his grandkids. The man who once sat on the ball, now lifting boxes in silence, rocking babies to sleep. Then came grief. His wife Sue was taken by motor neurone disease. He broke, quietly. Later, when his book came out, he made sure part of the profits went to MND Scotland. No fuss, just love. No second act, no loud ending. But those who remember know what he gave. He brought colour to a black and white game, chaos to a world that craved order. And when he walked away, he left no blueprint. Only echoes, no medals in glass, but stories too wild to be fake. Until you say, Alfie Conn, then it all makes sense. If you believe the legends aren't always the ones they praise, if you believe those who refuse to kneel deserve to be remembered, subscribe now. Because some careers are trophies, some are warnings. But Alfie Conn, his was a flare in the dark,